The diner buzzed with cruel laughter, sharp as broken glass. At the corner, a quiet waitress named Sophie balanced too many plates, her hands trembling as a group of rich kids jeered. One stuck out his foot. The crash silenced the room. Sophie knelt, cheeks burning, while they mocked her. Then the door swung open. A man in a grease-stained jacket stepped in, his little girl behind him. He saw everything, and he wasn't about to stay silent. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The neon sign buzzed above the diner, flickering against the rain-streaked windows. Inside, laughter cut through the hum of the jukebox, sharp, mocking. At the corner, Sophie Bennett balanced too many plates, her hands trembling as a group of wealthy college kids sneered at her. One of them stuck out a polished shoe. The crash of glass filled the room. Her cheeks flushed crimson as coffee and shards splattered across the floor. "Guess clumsy people shouldn't work here," one boy said, raising his phone to film. The others laughed. That's when the door swung open. Ethan Cole, a rugged mechanic in a grease-stained jacket, stepped inside, his 6-year-old daughter, Ella, clutching his hand. He froze, taking in the scene. The smirking faces, the trembling waitress on her knees. He set Ella on a booth seat and strode forward. "That's enough," he said quietly. His voice carried more power than volume. The laughter faded. The lead boy sneered. "Relax, man. We're just having fun." "Yeah." Ethan's gaze hardened. "You think humiliating people is fun?" The kid rolled his eyes. "You don't even know her." Ethan stepped closer, calm but unyielding. "I don't have to. My daughter's watching, and I'm teaching her what respect looks like." Silence fell. Even the cook peeked out from the kitchen. Ethan knelt beside Sophie, gently taking the glass from her shaking hands. "You're okay," he said softly. "Don't let people like that decide your worth." For a moment, Sophie couldn't speak, only nodded. And from the booth, Ella's small voice broke the tension. "Daddy, she can sit with us, right?" Sophie blinked through tears as Ethan smiled faintly. "Only if she wants to." As she sat down, one of the rich kids muttered on his way out, "You don't even know who she really is." Ethan didn't answer, but those words lingered, like a spark waiting to catch. The next morning, Ethan wiped the grease from his hands and shut the hood of an old Chevy, the engine finally purring. His small-town shop was quiet except for the sound of rain tapping the tin roof. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting back to the diner, to Sophie's trembling smile, to her soft, "thank you," that lingered longer than it should have. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the black SUV pulling into the lot until the tires crunched over gravel. The vehicle looked completely out of place. Tinted windows, spotless paint, the kind of car that belonged in the city, not here. The door opened, and Ethan froze. It was her. But this wasn't the same Sophie Bennett he'd seen in the diner uniform. She stepped out in a tailored gray suit, her hair sleek, her posture straight, confidence replacing the fragility he'd seen before. For a moment, Ethan thought he was dreaming. "Ethan Cole?" she asked, her voice calm but steady. He nodded slowly. "That's me. You okay?" She smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I should be asking you that. I owe you an explanation." He motioned her toward the small office in the corner of the shop. She glanced around, the smell of oil, the worn photos of Ella taped to the wall, and took a deep breath. "My real name isn't Sophie Bennett," she said quietly. "It's Sophie Bradford." The name hit him like a jolt. Everyone in the city knew that name. Bradford Holdings, billion-dollar empire, skyscrapers bearing the logo. "You mean, you're—" "Yes. My father was William Bradford. He passed away last year. I walked away from everything after that. The money, the company, the press." Her voice cracked slightly. "I wanted to know what life felt like without everyone pretending to care because of my last name." Ethan was silent for a moment. "So the people who mocked you were sons and daughters of my father's investors. They wanted to remind me I didn't belong outside that world." She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw the truth beneath the calm, loneliness. "But you stood up for me. You didn't know who I was. You just cared." She reached into her coat and pulled out a white envelope, setting it gently on his workbench. "Inside is a card, access to Bradford Holdings. It has your name on it. I want you to meet with me tomorrow." Ethan frowned. "Why me?" Her voice softened. "Because you fix what's broken. And right now, That's what I need most. Outside, the rain slowed, but Ethan's heart didn't. Ethan barely slept that night. The envelope sat on his kitchen table like it was staring at him. White, heavy, out of place beside Ella's crayon drawings and an old toolbox. Every time he looked at it, he wondered if it was a mistake. People like Sophie Bradford didn't walk into the lives of people like him. By morning, Ella was up, braiding her doll's hair and humming. "Daddy," she said, squinting at him. "You're wearing your nice shirt. Are you going somewhere special?" He smiled, half nervous. "Something like that, kiddo. Gotta meet a friend about some work." "Is it the lady from the diner?" she asked innocently. Ethan froze mid-button. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Now eat your cereal." An hour later, he parked his old pickup in front of the towering Bradford Holdings building. The glass walls reflected the sky like a mirror. Inside, polished marble floors gleamed beneath chandeliers that probably cost more than his truck. He felt the weight of every oil stain and calloused hand. A receptionist greeted him with a tight, professional smile. "Mr. Cole, Miss Bradford is expecting you." She handed him a visitor's badge, and security waved him through. As the elevator doors closed, Ethan caught his reflection, a mechanic stepping into a world of power. The doors opened to the top floor. Sophie stood by a massive window overlooking the city. Her hair shimmered under the light, but her expression was distant, heavy. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "You came," she said softly. "Still not sure why," he admitted. Sophie smiled faintly. "Because you're honest, and that's rare up here." She gestured toward a sleek glass table. "This company was my father's legacy. When he died, I thought I could run from it. But the people who worked for him, they turned it into something ugly. Greed. Corruption. I'm trying to rebuild it, but I can't do it surrounded by liars." Ethan frowned, uneasy. "So where do I come in?" "I need someone who tells the truth, even when it's hard. Someone who doesn't bend for money or power." He shifted, unsure whether to laugh or leave. "I fix cars, Sophie. I don't belong in a boardroom." She stepped closer, eyes steady on his. "You fix things that are broken. So fix this company with me. Help me remind people what decency looks like." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You've got the wrong guy." Her voice softened. "Maybe I've finally found the right one." The city hummed below, but in that office, time seemed to stop. Two people from opposite worlds realizing that kindness might just be the bridge between them. Ethan told himself it was just curiosity that brought him back the next morning. Not interest, not hope. Yet there he was, walking through the gleaming glass doors of Bradford Holdings again, his heartbeat loud enough to drown out the lobby music. Sophie met him with that same calm confidence, though her eyes betrayed fatigue. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "Yeah, well," Ethan muttered, scratching the back of his neck. "Figured I'd at least hear what this fixing things idea really means." She smiled faintly. "Follow me." They entered a conference room larger than his entire garage. Suits filled every chair. Some looked up curiously, others didn't bother to hide their disdain. Sophie stood at the head of the table. "Everyone, this is Ethan Cole. He'll be consulting with us on new operational improvements." A thin man in a designer suit scoffed. "Consulting? He's not even wearing a tie." Laughter rippled softly around the table. Ethan's jaw tightened, but Sophie's gaze silenced them. "He's here because he understands honesty. Something we seem to have misplaced," she said sharply. "If anyone has a problem, they can take it up with me." The laughter died fast. Ethan wanted to disappear, but Sophie's steadiness held him there. After the meeting, she caught up to him in the hallway. "I'm sorry about that," she said. "They're sharks. They see anyone outside their world as a threat." "I've met worse," Ethan replied. "Engines don't care who you are. They just tell the truth when they break." That made her laugh softly, the sound lighter than he'd ever heard it. "Maybe that's why I need you. Everyone here talks in circles. You speak straight." He paused, studying her. Beneath the polish, there was something vulnerable, a woman holding an empire together by sheer will. "You really think one mechanic can change all this?" he asked. "I think one honest man already changed me," she said quietly. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded once. "Then I guess I'll stick around for now." As he walked away, Sophie watched him go, her lips curving into a faint, genuine smile. For the first time in years, she felt something rare within those marble walls: hope. By the end of his first week at Bradford Holdings, Ethan realized two things. The place ran on money and fear. People spoke in rehearsed tones, avoided eye contact, and smiled too quickly when Sophie passed by. They feared her power, but not enough to respect it. Ethan spent his days in the maintenance wings, watching how things really worked. The ignored safety issues, the overloaded schedules, the whispered complaints about cutbacks. It didn't take long to see what Sophie meant. The company looked spotless from the outside, but underneath, something was rotting. Late Friday evening, while fixing a blown fuse near the loading dock, he overheard two men talking behind a column. "Keep those invoices off the record," one said. "She can't trace it if it's under the third-party contracts." "Won't she notice?" The other laughed. "Bradford's too busy playing saint. Let her think she's saving the world." Ethan froze. He didn't understand every word, but he knew dishonesty when he heard it. He wrote down a few details on the back of a receipt, his mind racing. The next morning, he found Sophie in her office, a place of polished calm hiding sleepless nights. Papers spread across her desk like fallen leaves. She looked up, eyes tired but alert. "You're here early." "Couldn't sleep," he said. "I heard something last night, something you should know." She motioned for him to sit. He told her what he'd overheard, every word. As he spoke, her expression shifted from curiosity to quiet fury. "I've suspected this for months," she whispered. "They're siphoning money from community projects. My father's charity programs, gone." Ethan frowned. "So what are you going to do about it?" Sophie met his gaze, her voice firm. "Not me. Us." He blinked. "Us? You said you fix what's broken," she replied. "Well, here's your biggest repair job yet." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan nodded slowly. "Guess I'm on the clock." Outside, the city skyline shimmered in the morning light. Inside, something new was forming, an alliance built not on money or power, but on trust. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became a ghost within the company. He blended into hallways no one important walked, listened to the chatter no one else heard. While executives hid behind tinted glass and catered lunches, he drank burnt coffee with the janitors, the guards, and the truck drivers, people who saw everything but said nothing. That's how he learned the truth ran deeper than missing invoices. Supplies were rerouted, charity funds laundered through fake accounts, and senior managers looked the other way, all under Sophie's name. Someone wanted her to fall. One evening, Sophie found him sitting alone in the maintenance bay, poring over printouts covered in grease marks. "You've been digging," she said softly. He looked up, half smiling. "Bad habit. Comes from trying to figure out why engines stall." She stepped closer, scanning the papers. "I knew there was corruption, but not this deep. Whoever's behind this, they're careful. They're making me look incompetent." "They're trying to make you give up," Ethan said. Her eyes lingered on his, searching for something steady. "And you're still here." He shrugged. "My daughter says you don't quit on good people." "Guess she's right." A faint laugh escaped her, the first real one he'd heard from her since the diner. But beneath it was exhaustion. "You shouldn't get involved, Ethan. This could get dangerous." "I'm already involved," he replied quietly. "The minute I saw those files, the minute you asked for help. That was it." She sat beside him, her perfume faint against the scent of oil and dust. "You risked your job for a woman you barely know." He glanced at her. "I know enough. You're fighting for something worth saving." For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind of silence that feels like a confession. Then Sophie straightened, pushing the papers into a folder. "Tomorrow, there's a board meeting. The man leading this, Harold Drake, he'll be there. If he's guilty, he'll slip. I just need proof." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then let's give him a reason to." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline, echoing the storm building inside Bradford Holdings. Neither of them knew it yet, but tomorrow would change everything, for the company and for them. The next morning, Bradford Holdings gleamed like it always did. Glass towers reflecting gold light, the illusion of perfection. But inside, tension simmered. Ethan stood quietly near the back of the boardroom, out of place among suits that cost more than his truck. He wasn't supposed to be there, but Sophie wanted him close. At the long table, the board members gathered, men and women polished like armor, all smiling too wide. Harold Drake, the chief financial officer, sat at the far end, his silver hair slicked back, his cufflinks flashing with every gesture. "Before we begin," Sophie said, her tone even but cold, I'd like to discuss the missing allocations from the Bradford Foundation Fund. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Harold leaned back, feigning calm. We've already reviewed those numbers. Simple accounting delays. Delays. Sophie slid a folder across the table. $500,000 wired to shell charities that don't exist. Signed under your authorization code. Murmurs erupted. Harold's smile faltered. You're mistaken. Am I? She turned slightly toward Ethan. Mr. Cole, would you hand out the copies? Ethan stepped forward, distributing the documents he'd gathered from maintenance storage. Receipts, dates, matching signatures. Every page told the same story. Harold's composure cracked. Where did you get this? From the people you forgot existed, Ethan said evenly. Truck drivers, clerks, the ones who see everything. The room fell silent. Sophie rose from her chair, calm but fierce. My father built this company on integrity. You turned it into a feeding trough. You wanted me to fail because I didn't play your game. She leaned forward slightly, voice sharp. You're done, Harold. He stood, red-faced. You think this will save you? You're a child pretending to lead. That man beside you, he jabbed a finger toward Ethan. He's a mechanic. You'd trust him over your own board? Yes, Sophie said simply. Because he remembers what it means to be decent. Security entered moments later. Harold's protests echoed through the hall as they escorted him out. The rest of the board sat frozen, unsure whether to speak or breathe. Sophie turned to Ethan, the adrenaline fading from her face. You just made a lot of enemies today, she murmured. He gave a tired grin. Wouldn't be the first time. But as she met his eyes, something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, admiration, and a spark neither dared name yet. Outside, rain began to fall against the glass again, washing the city clean, at least for a while. By the next morning, Bradford Holdings was on every business channel in the country. The headline read, CEO exposes corruption inside her own board. The photo showed Sophie standing firm at the head of the table, but her eyes in that picture didn't show victory. They showed exhaustion. When Ethan arrived at the shop that afternoon, reporters were already waiting near the gate. Someone had leaked his name, calling him the mechanic who brought down a millionaire. He shoved past them, muttering, no comment. But they followed with cameras flashing. Mr. Cole, are you and Miss Bradford working together romantically? Is it true she's stepping down? How much were you paid to help her? The words hit harder than he expected. Inside the shop, he slammed the door shut, the noise startling Ella, who looked up from her coloring book. Daddy, what's wrong? Nothing, sweetheart, he said softly, crouching beside her. Just grown-ups talking too loud again. That night, a black car pulled up outside his house. Ethan opened the door before they could knock. Sophie stepped out, wrapped in a long coat, eyes red from lack of sleep. I'm sorry, Ethan, she said. I didn't think they'd come after you too. He shook his head. I can handle it. No, you shouldn't have to. She looked down, voice low. They're saying I used you, that I staged the whole thing for attention. He gave a humorless laugh. You? The woman who can buy half the city? That's not the point, she whispered. They want to break me before the board votes on my leadership next week. And if they can't ruin my name, they'll ruin yours. Ethan studied her for a long moment, the city lights flickering across her face. You stood up for what's right. Don't back down now. Her eyes shimmered. You don't understand, Ethan. This world doesn't forgive honesty. He stepped closer, voice quiet but firm. Then it's about time it learns to. For a heartbeat, she just looked at him, really looked at him, and the mask she'd worn for years finally cracked. You always know what to say, don't you? He smiled faintly. Not always, but I know when someone needs to hear it. Sophie took a shaky breath, the weight of her empire pressing down. I don't know what happens next. Ethan met her gaze. Then we figure it out together. The air between them was heavy but warm. Two lives from different worlds standing on the same side of the storm. The following days turned into a blur of headlines, rumors, and whispers. Bradford Holdings was bleeding. Investors pulled out. The board called an emergency vote to reassess leadership. And through it all, Sophie stood tall, until the threat started. Late one night, Ethan found her outside the office, standing alone on the balcony, her hair whipping in the wind. The city below glimmered, cold and distant. They're saying I fabricated everything, she murmured. That I planted the evidence to take control. Ethan stepped beside her. You've got proof. You've got the truth. She laughed bitterly. Truth doesn't matter to people who already decided you're the villain. He turned, leaning against the railing. Then let them see who you really are. Don't fight like them, fight better. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A text. When she read it, the color drained from her face. What is it? Ethan asked. She showed him the message, a photo of Ella walking home from school, followed by a single line. Back off, or next time, she won't be alone. Ethan's blood went cold. They're going after my daughter? Sophie's voice trembled. Ethan, I swear I didn't know. He cut her off, fist clenched. This isn't business anymore. This is war. Within minutes, they were in his truck, racing through the rain. When they reached the school, Ella was safe, laughing with the teacher. But the sight of her tiny hand waving broke something inside him. He realized how far this had gone, and how deep Sophie's enemies would sink. Back in the truck, Sophie sat in silence, guilt shadowing her features. You should stay away from me, she said finally. You and Ella deserve peace. I only bring danger. Ethan's jaw tightened. You didn't start this, but I'll be damned if I let them win. She looked at him then, eyes wide and glistening. Why are you still here, Ethan? He met her gaze, voice low. Because when the world gets ugly, someone has to stay. For a long time, she said nothing, just reached over and took his hand, her fingers cold but steady. Then we stand together, she whispered. Outside, lightning flashed across the skyline, painting them both in silver light. Two souls who refused to back down. The storm hit its peak on the day of the board's final vote. The city outside was drenched in gray, and inside Bradford Holdings, tension thickened the air like fog. Ethan stood near the back again, not as a guest this time, but as Sophie's anchor. Every eye in the room was on her as she entered, composed but pale. This meeting will determine the future of this company, said one of the senior members coldly. You've brought chaos, Miss Bradford. Investors demand stability. Sophie took a breath. Stability built on corruption isn't stability, it's rot. A murmur rippled through the room. Harold Drake's allies sat rigid, silent, waiting for her to stumble. Sophie lifted a small flash drive and set it on the table. This contains the entire paper trail of stolen funds, every offshore account, every falsified signature, all traced back to those who tried to bury my father's name. Gasps erupted. Ethan watched, proud but tense. The evidence they'd risked everything to find now glowed on the projector screen, numbers and names scrolling like confessions. When the silence broke, it was deafening. You think the public will forgive this? One board member sneered. You'll burn with us. Sophie stood taller. Maybe, but at least I'll burn honest. The vote was swift, a divided boardroom split by fear and conscience. When the results appeared on the screen, Sophie's hands trembled. Retained as CEO, by one vote. Relief swept through the room like air after thunder. Ethan exhaled slowly, only realizing now that his fists were still clenched. After the meeting, Sophie found him by the elevator. Her eyes shimmered, but this time, not from exhaustion. We did it, she whispered. No, Ethan said softly, smiling. You did. She shook her head. I couldn't have without you. Then, for the first time, she let herself be vulnerable. Really vulnerable. When my father died, I thought I'd lost everything. But maybe I just hadn't met the right people yet. Ethan chuckled quietly. Guess I was just in the right diner at the right time. Sophie laughed, a real, unguarded laugh that filled the hall. Downstairs, Ella ran up and hugged Sophie's leg. Daddy said you were brave today. Sophie knelt, smiling through tears. I had good people beside me. Outside, the storm finally broke, sunlight spilling over the city. Ethan glanced at the gleaming Bradford Tower, then at Sophie, no longer the lost waitress from that night, but a woman who had rebuilt her life with courage, grace, and truth. Come on, he said, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. Let's go home. As they walked toward the light, Sophie reached for his hand and didn't let go. Because in the end, their story wasn't about power or fortune. It was about a single act of kindness that changed two lives forever and reminded them both that decency, no matter how small, can rewrite destinies. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.